Good Tuesday morning of the first week of Advent. Let me read from Isaiah here. Has to be one of the great prophetic passages in all of the Bible. One of the most poetic and elegant and eloquent. One that's used countless ways. Let me read it to you before I shoot my mouth off. Let me do it. Oh, I think hiccups. And this is from Isaiah. On that day, a shoot shall sprout from the stump of Jesse, and from his roots a bud shall blossom. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, a spirit of wisdom and understanding, a spirit of counsel and of strength, a spirit of knowledge and of fear of the Lord. And his delight shall be the fear of the Lord. Not by appearance shall he judge, nor by hearsay shall he decide, but he shall judge the poor with justice and decide aright for the land's afflicted. He'll make the peace, in other words. He shall strike the ruthless with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he shall slay the wicked. Again, it's the assertion of justice. Justice shall be the band around his waist, and faithfulness a belt upon his hips. This is one of the greatest images now that you see at this time of the year. Then the wolf shall be the guest of the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid. The calf and the young lion shall browse together with the little child to guide them. The cow and the bear shall be neighbors. Together their young shall rest. The lion shall eat hay like the ox. The baby shall play by the cobra's den, and the child lay his hand on the adder's lair. There shall be no harm or ruin on all my holy mountain, for the earth shall be filled with knowledge of the Lord, as water covers the sea. On that day, the root of Jesse set up as a signal for the nations. The Gentiles shall seek out, for his dwelling shall be glorious. What a vision of paradise. What a magnificent portraiture of paradise. And of course, Christ. The spirit of counsel and of strength, the spirit of knowledge and fear of the Lord, and his delight shall be the fear of the Lord. Doesn't mean he's afraid of it. It's respect. See, our Lord always showed deference to his Father. Okay? He shall judge the poor with justice. He'll make things right and decide aright for the lands afflicted. He shall strike the ruthless with the rod of his mouth. With the breath of his lips he shall slay the wicked. Justice shall be the band around his waist, faithfulness a belt upon his hips. Makes all things right. He is the Lord of justice. You know, the world cries out for that. It has its entire history, and especially in the 20th century. The suffering, the unjust suffering of the poor. I just think of the European community, just the Jews alone. Well, the 6 million were killed. The horrors of the land. The horrors of the 20th century. Somebody described the 20th century as a century of horror. Even its culmination and its conclusion, atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, brought an end to the Second World War, but a portent to the future. Annihilation. Potential of annihilation by a singular bomb. We live in the age of horror, and yet we live on the age of horror with hope. Hope that all things will be made right, that justice will pervade, and that justice shall be the band around his waist, and faithfulness on his hip. Redemption, that God in his way, his own way and time, etc., will bring around the human heart to seek not power and rule, but the humility of holiness and justice, to make things right, to make the world right, from the intimacy of our home to the nation state and the world community. That's the truth. If anything we have learned from the 20th century is don't repeat it. The two great wars. Where did they occur? The center of Western civilization, Europe. The most educated, sophisticated, globally impacting world, European community. And that's where the greatest horror occurred. The greatest of wars, first and the second, where genocide occurred, systemic slaughter of the Jews, and the world tensions that followed, and the struggle between Soviet communism, hence China as well, and the free world, Europe, NATO, and America. We live on the edge of horror. As a young boy, I was only in 7th, 8th grade, maybe a freshman in high school. I was a member of the Ground Observer Corps. We used to go, Al, Pete, and I. My friend Al, Frankie, Al, Pete, and I, my brother Pete. We went to the headquarters of the Ground Observer Corps, which is in our area, the headquarters, and we used to work these maps. And you have to be old for this. The Ground Observer Corps was a volunteer organization of men and women who went out and were observing the horizon for fear that the Russians, principally the Russians, would come over the North Pole and down the East Coast with low-flying planes. So what the lookouts were looking for were 4-engine planes flying low, below the radar, coming north to south. And what we were doing, we were in their headquarters, and we were tracking them. That's a true story. That's the living on the edge of horror. That's the 20th century, the age of horror. Not only the wars fought, but the wars feared. And when you think of Christmas, and you think of the coming of Christ, you hope that a form of justice will occur from the human heart, up from and through the human heart, that there be a radical transformation from the belief in power to the belief in love, that we will love each other in such a manner that we will make obsolete the use of weapons. It's not pie in the sky. That's hope. And it's a hope that is more capable now than ever in history because of our massive communication. We can talk to anybody in the world anytime we want. And hence we have a chance to talk with and to and share with all the peoples of the world. That there are no strangers anymore. That no one is foreign to someone else. And maybe in this place of the contention of war, there can be the communion of friendship. The United Nations is based upon that hope that if we talk together, we can become friends together. It's still a hope. And now, because of the technologies we possess and the recognition that we have the capacity to annihilate the human race, hence the urgency for conversation and the reclamation of human friendship, to reclaim it and make ourselves citizens of the singular world, now not through power but through friendship, where we can become actively friends together. I mean, it's possible. It's more possible now than ever, any time in the 20th century, because we can communicate with each other now. We don't live in my view, as dangerous an age as the one I lived in the 50s, late 50s and early 60s. I remember the Cuban crisis in 1962. You've got to be old for this one, but I can remember that I thought, I was living in New York at the time, that I will die tonight. We'll have a nuclear exchange. It was that real. those ships didn't turn around, we'd have sunk them. And we would have been at war with Russia. And already Russia had, in Cuba, nuclear warheads attached to intercontinental ballistic missiles. We would have been in a very bad spot. We would have been in nuclear war. It was a moment of horror and terror. For those of us on the East Coast in the big cities, Boston, New York, Washington, we were primary targets. When I came out here, I thought, maybe not so bad in St. Louis. Maybe they won't hit us. But I know darn well if this were New York, if I were in New York, I'd be the first to get clipped. Yeah, it's the truth. Christmas is a wonderful time of hope that the gospel will transform our hearts, the hearts of the nations throughout the world. We learn to love one another for all our diversity and differences, but still love each other as fellow members of a race that Christ is a member of, the human divine race. So we'll learn to see God in each other and love each other.